Well, good morning. Hey, if we've never met, my name's CJ, pastor here. That lady up here, beautiful lady up here earlier was my wife, and we were really excited about what God is calling us to do. And I want to say thank you, church, for being the kind of church that you are. I was having a conversation with someone this week. 2 years ago, they walked through the doors of our church, and they were done with church, like done, burned, broken, walked in the doors of our church, and they haven't left since because it's a friendly place to be. Because people love each other. And it's not just being friendly, but actually making a friendship in a small group and things like that. Isn't that a good quality to have in church? Yes, and how many of you guys think that it's worth it to invest in friendships, to go out to lunch with someone after church, to buy them a meal? Is that you? Okay, look at those people that cheered. They're the ones that are buying you lunch today. Where were they? Yeah, somewhere over here? Good, get them. Go, hey, what are you doing for lunch today? You guys can do that, all right? Hey, we're in this series, week 2 of our series, How's Your Soul? And in the video, the bumper video is what we call it, you see a bunch of smiling, happy, laughing people. They're joking around. I love the one, they're just running on the beach in the water, just smiling and happy, frolicking around. And all that stuff on the outside, that's great. That's wonderful. I pray that over your life. But how's your soul? Like how you doing on the outside? Yeah, you're probably pretty good. Most of us are probably doing all right. But how's your soul? What's beyond the skin deep level? Like what's beyond that? How is the inside of you? How is the internal you? That's a real question, because sometimes that internal you can be a bit of a roller coaster, right? Yeah, anybody else been there? It's a bit of I remember the first time I went on a roller coaster. I was about 10 years old, and I went to Busch Gardens for the first time with a summer camp. And so we went up to Busch Gardens, and there was a new roller coaster back then. Brand new, 60 miles an hour. That's how fast it was back then. 150 feet tall with a 135-foot drop, the largest vertical loop in the world. And I was gonna go on that roller coaster. Kumba. Anybody remember that? Who here grew up in Florida going, ooh, I saw the commercial. The Disney afternoon was on, and I watched, Kumba, I have to go on Kumba. And so I get there, we get in line, there's like a 45-minute wait, we get through the line, I get on the roller coaster, they close the harness, and I'm a small 10-year-old, I'm a little dude, and I'm flopping all around in that thing. I'm like, I'm gonna die. Look at my friend, he goes, we gonna die? Yeah, we're gonna die. We are dead, right? I should not have done this. Kumba is gonna eat me. And it turns the corner and it goes up the track, click, 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 which seems like forever. First time you're ever on a roller coaster, you ever been there? Just like click, 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 click. And it hits the top. And that gut-wrenching moment where your stomach ends up in your earlobe somewhere and you're just like, arms flailing all over the place, wondering if the harness is coming off, everything. You hit the largest vertical loop in the world and you're flipping all over the place, and after 30 seconds, you're like, I love it. Anybody else? You ever been there? I love it. I was terrified and now I love it. Sometimes our soul does the same thing. We have these moments where we're like, yes, so amazing, everything is awesome. Everything's terrible, I hate everything about my life, right? You ever been there? You wake up in the morning, had a good night's sleep, a good dream, click, 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 click. Things are going up. You're going in the right direction, right? You're doing the right things. And your spouse rolls over and it's like, what are you looking at? Downhill fast. You get in your car, you're going to work, favorite song on the radio. I got this feeling. Click, 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 click. All right, like just going up. And then that person in traffic cuts you off. What happens next? You're going downhill, aren't you? Get an email, you made the sale. Click, click, click. Then what happens? Your boss walks in and he's a jerk. All over the place. Right? Or how about this one? This is my favorite. You get a text message from your significant other. And the 3 words that you've been waiting to hear, just longing, a bated breath. They text it. You were right. Oh. Click, 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 click. It's gonna be a good day. And guys, you know that's hypothetical because you will never get that text. Sorry. Like next week's Father's Day, ladies, humor him. Just text him. Doesn't even matter about what. You were right. He could have been wrong. It doesn't matter. He could have been right about anything. You're alive. Hey, you were right, right? Like just give him that one. It's Father's Day, right? And a car show here at the shore. Woo, get it. All right. So, but check it out. Our soul goes up and down and up and down and up and down. But there's a way to kind of find some balance in that. The psalmist David, he's David and Goliath David, King of Israel David. He wrote in the book of Psalms this, check it out. Psalms chapter 42, verse 4, he says, my heart is breaking. You ever been there before? Heart's breaking. Next verse though, verse 5, I will put my hope in God. So he's like, downhill, oh, coming back uphill again. Verse 6, now I am deeply discouraged. Oh, going back downhill again, right, David? But in verse 8, look what he says. But each day, the Lord pours his unfailing love upon me. Ups and downs, ups and downs. Up the roller coaster, down the roller coaster. But you know how he came back up each time? When his heart was breaking, what did he go to? He goes, I'm gonna put my hope in God, not in the circumstances of my life. And when he says, I'm deeply discouraged, he's depressed, the things are pushing down on him, where does he go to come back up out of that? He goes, but each day the Lord pours his unfailing love upon me. If we want to start to stop the roller coaster from taking us down, we've got to find a source that is able to pull us back up. And that's our relationship with God. That is Jesus Christ. We talked last week about Adam, the man. God formed him from the dust of the earth. He had all the requirements of being a human being except for one thing, the breath of life within him. The Bible tells us that God breathed life into Adam and he became a living being, a human being. But it wasn't until that breath was in Adam that he actually became alive. And in doing that, God created the soul of Adam. God created who he is on the inside, distinct and personal by God himself. God is the creator. So if we ever hope to get out of the downward funk of the heart is breaking and I'm deeply discouraged, we've got to go to the source, the one who created us, to lift us up. Does that make sense? If we're gonna get off the roller coaster, we've got to have a relationship with God, the author and the creator of who we are, our soul. And it's only in him that we can actually find connection. It's only him. So the story of Adam continues. Last week we covered the perfect environment for the human soul. You guys remember this? The perfect environment for the human soul. There's 4 things that God did. He took Adam and he put him in the Garden of Eden, and there was 4 ingredients to a healthy soul for Adam. The first one was rest. Gave him a place where he could rest, the garden. Beautiful trees, good fruit, peace in his heart was necessary to have a healthy soul. So God puts him in a place like that. But he didn't just leave it there. He didn't just say, relax your days, just go, do whatever you want, just relax. No. He actually, after that, he gave him responsibility. He says, you're to tend to the garden. And when we have responsibility in our life, we actually find ultimate fulfillment. Because if our life is all about us and never accomplishing anything, never doing anything for God, we never actually find fulfillment. It's in fact when we give out of ourselves that we actually begin to have a strong relationship with God and we actually find a healthy soul. Then the next one was restraint. God said, you're in the garden, but there's one tree you can't eat from. You cannot eat from this one tree. And in doing that, God introduced the element of choice into Adam's life. And Adam is stronger when he says no to temptation. He's stronger when he says yes to the will of God, and he says no to his own will to eat that tree. He is stronger. His soul is healthier when that occurs. And then the last one was relationship. God introduced Eve into the equation, and Adam was like, this is good. This is really good, God, thank you, right? We all need healthy relationships. We all need, whether that's friendships, like my spouse, she's awesome, she completes me. But then I also need other friendships with other guys who are pastors, who are husbands, who are fathers, because I need to learn from them because they're doing what I do, and we need to grow together. We need those relationships. So in that, God puts Adam in this perfect environment for the human soul. He puts him in this garden, and he gives him these parameters, but how many know the story doesn't end well, does it? Adam and Eve fall into temptation. As the story goes on, the book of Genesis, you read that the enemy, the devil, the serpent, he begins to talk to Adam and Eve and says, hey, is it true that you cannot eat from the trees? And they go, no, we can eat from any tree, just not that one, because we'll die. And he goes, well, no, you're not actually gonna die. You're gonna become like God. You're gonna become wise. You're gonna know the difference between right and wrong. And then in chapter 3 of the book of Genesis, we pick up this story. So after this convincing temptation, it says this, the woman, that is Eve, was convinced. And she saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and she ate it. All right, next verse, it continues. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment, their eyes were opened and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. And so what was paradise between the rest and the responsibility and the restraint and the relationships now is taken a back seat. Because God said, hey, in this restraint portion, I don't want you to eat from this tree. Adam and Eve go, well, it looks good. It looks like it tastes good, and it gives us wisdom. I really want that. And so they start to work in their own human logic, and they take the fruit and they eat, and now there's sin. And each one of us have fallen into the same kind of environment. Now, it may not be a literal piece of fruit, but we've all done something. We've stepped out of course with God's will for our life, haven't we? Where God says, hey, this is a direction for you. This is what you should be doing, and not this. But instead of doing what God has asked us to do, we do the thing we're not supposed to. We eat the fruit, right? So what do we do now? Well, there's two things that happen when we do this. The two ways that we follow Adam. The first one is the way of the fruit. For Adam, it was completely natural to him. If you remember the verse, it said the tree was beautiful. The fruit looked delicious. They wanted the wisdom that it would bring. Those are all good things, aren't they? It's beautiful. It's delicious. It adds value to your life with wisdom. Why wouldn't you want to eat this? The only reason why you wouldn't is because God said no. That's it, right? And so Adam has a choice. Do I put my will first or God's will first? And the way of the fruit is what we often choose, right? Well, the way of the fruit is human intellect. Well, it makes sense to me. If it makes you feel good, do it. As long as you're not hurting anybody, just do it. That's solid logic for Adam. But the problem is, he's working on his own logic, not God's. He's working with his own will and not God's will. You see the difference there? The way of the fruit is so natural for us to take. In fact, sometimes we even justify it. We find reasons. We try to talk ourselves into doing things that we know we shouldn't do. If you have to talk yourself into doing it, you probably shouldn't do it, right? But how many times do we say, you know what, it feels good. It'll make me happy. It'll make me do this, it'll make me that. And sometimes we go, well, God has a plan for me, but you know what? I have a plan for me too. And I think my plan's gonna make me happy right now. And you're waiting on God's plan. And so the way of the fruit is just exchanging your will for God's. Instead of putting God on the throne of your life, you put yourself. And that's what Adam did. That's what Eve did. And after they did that, what happened? They realized they messed up. They were ashamed of their nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together, and that is the reaction. That's the second thing that I tend to do, that we tend to do. It's the way of the fig leaf, right? We try to cover up. I don't know about you, I've messed up. Have you? I got 3 people that are honest in here. Okay, that's good. Just 3 of you. I'm sorry I'm ruining your presence, right? Like, I've messed up before. I've really messed up, and I've tried to cover up for my mess ups. Have you ever done that? That's what Adam and Eve are doing. They've messed up and they go, let's get some fig leaves. That'll make the situation better. And we do that. We try to, our soul is unhealthy. Adam and Eve's soul is unhealthy now. They're broken, there's something. They're feeling shame and guilt for the very first time. They are unhealthy on a soul level, aren't they? So what do they try to do? They try to do something in the natural, in the physical, to cover up their shame and their guilt. I think sometimes we do that. If I would be happier if I just bought a bigger fill in the blank, a faster fill in the blank, if I had more of fill in the blank, if I had more power, more career, if I got rid of this spouse and got a new spouse, I would be happier. What is it? It's covering up our unhealthy soul, correct? That's really what we're doing. We're trying to find happiness. When it's our soul that's unhappy, we try to change the physical things on the outside to discover happiness on the inside. And that's all that Adam, it's just a bigger fig leaf is all it is. And sometimes it's not about what we do and what we possess, but we're deflecting from ourselves onto something else so that we kind of get out of the center of attention. So sometimes the fig leaf is the biggest thing that we do is we criticize other people. And we define ourselves by what we're not. I'm not as bad as that person, that makes me good. I'm not as bad as them, or I don't do as many bad things as they do, or I'm smarter than them, or I'm better than this and better than that and better than whatever. And what we're trying to do is deflect the attention from our stuff to lower them so that we look higher. So on some internal level we're doing. And in turn, we become this giant critic. You ever meet people that are giant critics? Usually the most critical people in the world are the ones who are just trying to hide their soul the most. Because their soul is not healthy. And they're trying to get the attention off of themselves and put it on everyone else. So there's the fruit and the fig leaf, and we've all been there, haven't we? We've all done our own will instead of God's. We've all tried to cover it up, but it only leads to an unhealthy soul. And so while God is walking in the garden one day, he is trying to find Adam, and Adam is hiding. That's really interesting to me because God is everywhere at all times and knows all things, yet God is like, I'm hiding from you. So God finds him, and he says, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm naked and I was ashamed, so I hid. And he goes, you ate the fruit. Well, and then he goes, the woman you gave me, she's the one that did it. Boom, boom, there goes Eve right under the bus, right? Like just gone. It's just, he completely blames her. And here's what God does. He doesn't yell at him. He doesn't get angry with him. God actually goes out and he makes the very first sacrifice in the Bible. And he takes the skins of that animal sacrifice and he creates clothing for these two to wear. They sin, God sacrifices and covers their sin. Now there's consequences of every sin and they were dismissed from the garden. Absolutely. You felt the consequences of sin, so have I. I've messed up and I've had to deal with it. But God still covered my sin. Fast forward to Jesus. Humanity is still broken. The soul is still hurting, right? The people are still trying to find their direction in the fruit. They're still trying to cover it up with the fig leaf, but it's just different fruit and different fig leaves, right? Just like today, it's different fruit and different fig leaves. And Jesus sees that the world is broken. And he comes to earth, lays his life down on the cross, makes a sacrifice. So humanity sins, God sacrifices to cover that sin. Just like God did in the garden is what he's doing on the cross with Jesus Christ. Where we have all sinned and fallen short of where we're supposed to be. God wasn't satisfied with a separation from us, so he sacrificed himself to pay the price that our sins may be covered in him. And in the Bible, it talks about this Adam, first Adam, and he calls Jesus the second Adam in the book of Romans, in the book of 1 Corinthians. He says there's a similarity between Adam, the one we're learning about today, and Jesus Christ himself. In Romans chapter 5, it says this, for the sins of this one man, Adam, caused death to rule over many. So in that moment, when sin entered the world for the first time, you and I inherited that. We were born into a broken, fallen, and sinful world, weren't we? Like, look around, watch the news. Yes, the answer is yes. And that's because our souls are broken. But even greater than all of this brokenness, even greater than the sin that is in the world, even greater is God's wonderful grace and his gift of righteousness for all who receive it will live in triumph over sin and death through this one man, Jesus Christ. So Paul, the writer of the book of Romans, is comparing and contrasting the first Adam with Jesus Christ himself. He's saying that this one piece, this one man, Adam, brought brokenness into the world, and this one man, Jesus, brought righteousness into the world. And the passage continues, yes, Adam's one sin brings condemnation for everyone, but Christ's one act of righteousness brings a right relationship with God and new life for everyone. That's good news, isn't it? And then he has this one last verse, this one last line. Because one person disobeyed God, that's Adam, many became sinners. But because one other person obeyed God, that's Jesus, the second Adam, many will be made righteous. That's the work of the cross. That's the work of Jesus Christ in us. That's who we're supposed to be. And you know the truth? Every single one of us will walk in the shadow of one of these two men. Every single person. Check it out. Every person will walk in the shadow of one of these two men. Every single one of us. We can choose Adam or we can choose Jesus. In fact, if you don't choose Jesus, by default, we're choosing Adam. Because we are born into the way of Adam. We're born into it. Without choosing Jesus, we by default have chosen the way of Adam. And let me show you a little bit about the man Adam and a little bit about his work. Check it out. Now, number one, the first Adam chose the way of conventional manhood or womanhood or personhood or, I'm talking about mankind. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Adam chose the traditional way, the conventional way of mankind. And what is that? Tree looks good. Looks like it tastes good. I like the wisdom that it'll give me, so I'll do what I want, right? It's a good decision. It's sound reasoning and sound logic by Adam's standards. The only problem was that was Adam's standard, not God's. And when we get in trouble the most, when our life gets in trouble the most, we go, sounds good to me, looks good to me, looks logical to me, without consulting God on the issue. We do things out of our own emotions, out of our own reactions, instead of opening up God's word and seeing what he says about our decisions, about our lifestyle, about the way we live our life. And so Adam, he is this conventional way, and this is the way that we're all born into. This is the logic, this is the human reasoning that we've all found. And I'm telling you, I've talked to person after person after person who looks at this and they go, yeah, it looks good to me, to me, to me. It's sound logic to me. But you know what? You aren't wired to think the best things for you. We do not have the pedigree to understand what is best for ourselves. I believe that because God created us. He's the creator of our soul. And he knows what's best for our soul. And sometimes restraint is the best thing for our soul. Is your soul healthy? The question rings out. Is your soul healthy? The answer is going to be yes if you submit your will to him. But if you chase after your own Adam's way, if you go the conventional way, we're gonna struggle. We're gonna fall into the cycle of the fruit and then the fig leaf, and then get some more fruit because I need to make things better on the outside, and then I'm gonna cover it up with the fig leaf, and I'm gonna get some more fruit, and that cycle continues again and again and again. But the second way that we have an option of walking in the shadow of is the way of Jesus Christ himself. He's our example of this. Number two, Jesus is the example of authentic manhood or personhood, right? He is the example of the direction we should walk. In my small group with my guys, we're learning about four things. The four things that the example of Jesus Christ calls for us to follow. Four different ways. And it's a guys group, but I believe it's applicable to everyone, right? It's applicable to a man, woman, and child in this room. These are the four things that I believe that we should be pursuing across the board as an example of Christ. So the first one is to reject passivity. Reject passivity. You guys know Adam and Eve in the garden? It talks a lot about Eve, doesn't it? She was convinced. She saw the tree. She saw the fruit. She wanted the wisdom, and she ate the fruit. And so a lot of times we go, it's all the woman's fault. It's all the woman's fault. But then the next line says, and she gave some to Adam, who was with her the whole time, listening to the sales pitch of the enemy, right? Holding her purse going, yes, whatever you say, dear. Yep, that sounds good. Yes, keep talking to the snake. This is wonderful. God told us not to, but I don't care, right? Like, what's he doing? If the fate of mankind is in the balance, Adam, freaking say something, man. Like, passiveness has led us to destinations we didn't want to go, but we just were too afraid to say something. We're afraid to do something. If we say, I'm too tired to do that, well, you're just too tired then. I'm too busy to accomplish that. Then you're too busy. Fix the tired, fix the busy, because we cannot be passive in the things that matter the most. Adam failed there, Jesus succeeded there. The second one is to accept responsibility. God's looking for Adam. Adam, where are you? I was hiding because I was afraid and I was naked. Who told you were naked? You ate the tree, didn't you? You ate from the tree. The woman you gave me the fruit and then I ate it. It's really her deal. What does he do? Is he accepting responsibility? No, he totally throws her under the bus. And indirectly, who is he really blaming? God himself, isn't he? The woman you God, you got me into this mess. You ever meet those people that blame God? If you've met me, you've met one. Because I've gone through seasons in my life where I'm like, God, this is all you. But you know what? I cannot submit my will to his while blaming him at the same time. I can't do it. So I need to accept responsibility. Adam could have walked out and gone, I got kicked out of the garden. It's all God's fault. But Adam's the one who ate the fruit, right? He's the one that disobeyed. He's the one that made the decision. And there's always consequences to our actions. Whether they're positive or negative, there's always consequences. And I know sometimes there's things that are completely out of your control, and you're thinking about those things right now. I get it. But what I need to do first when I don't understand is I need to take my will off the throne of my life and put God's will on the throne of my life. And I need to understand that, you know what? I'm gonna accept responsibility when I can, when I understand it. And the rest of the time, I'm gonna say, you know what, God, this is on you. And one day I'll understand, but today I don't. But I'm still gonna love you and I'm still gonna serve you. The third thing is to lead courageously. Adam failed here, but Jesus is a supreme example of this. To lead courageously, to step out in faith, to take the next step, to lead courageously. We understand that Jesus did an incredible work, right? He had incredible sacrifice, he did incredible things for us. But do we even really realize what sacrifices he made to lead courageously? Like Jesus was born in a stable, in a manger, in that little town called Bethlehem, to an unwed mother, right? That's not an ideal human condition to be in, right? But if you add to the fact that where he was before that was in heaven, seated at the right hand of the Father with all the trappings of heaven, to leave that, now that is leading courageously, isn't it? When he saw humanity in its sin and its brokenness, and he says, you know what, I've got to make a sacrifice to cover that. That is a big step, isn't it? That's a big way to lead courageously and to live his life as a man, to be subject to the laws of human factors and to lay his life down on the cross. That is a really big deal. He stepped out in faith. He led courageously. He's a supreme example for us to do that. Again, sometimes we say, well, I don't want to step out. It's scary. Well, who are you leaning on? Your own ability or God's ability? Your own will or God's will? We've got to follow the example of Christ. Let's lead courageously. And then the fourth one, I love this one the most. Invest eternally. Invest eternally. We need to think that there's life beyond this life. Well, we need to think beyond the years and days we have here on this planet. Because our soul lives on forever. We can get our soul healthy now, but it's gonna live beyond this too. We need to invest eternally. It's why we talk so much about growth track. Well, our growth track, we help people discover how God uniquely made them so that they can invest eternally. Not so they can make more money, not so they can have a better life here on earth, but so they can make a difference in the world, to invest in the souls of the hearts of man, so that one day we can have a great relationship and a reward in heaven with God himself. We need to invest eternally. And so in Growth Track, we help you discover your personality, your gifts, your spiritual gifts, your love languages and your passions. We start to walk you through that process so that you can begin to invest in eternity, not just to live for the now, but to live for the then. To live for the then. And so that's why we do that in Growth Track. And I got to tell you, man, it's step 2 tonight. I wouldn't wait. It's step 2. We did step 1 last week, and I know some of you guys are going, but I missed step 1. I'll just wait till next time. It's going to bother me. Let it bother you. I don't care. What kind of special dispensation do you need? Do I need to get holy water or something sprinkled on you? It's okay. Go to step 2 tonight, because if you start tonight and catch step 1 next month, that's okay. Just go. Just go. And I've got to personally apologize, because sometimes when I come into a church service for us, I act like you guys don't want to sometimes, like you don't want to invest eternally. And I apologize for that. I say things like if you want to, or if you feel led to, or if you whatever. Listen, when it comes to being a Christian, investing eternally isn't really if I want to. God says this is your life. This is how we live. And now, if you're not a Christian, ignore the next minute of this, okay? But if you are, God looks at you and he says, I want you to take your life and sacrifice what is necessary for me and my sake, for the good news. Mark chapter 8. He says, if you try to hang on to your life, you're gonna lose it, right? But if you lose your life for my sake and the gospel message, you'll actually save it. That's exactly what we're talking here. Our soul will never be healthy if we try to take everything in for us. But if we give everything we are for Jesus Christ, his message and his gospel, he says that's when you're gonna be really alive. That's when you get to be really alive. And so the question isn't should I or should I not do these things? Should I share my faith with someone or should I not? That's not the question. It's not should I or shouldn't I, but when should I? Because it is you should. It's not how many girls or how many people or should I sponsor a girl to go to camp this summer in the Dominican Republic or shouldn't I? The question is, how many should I? Because I should. How many people should I feed in Durban? How many kids should I send to school? Because again, it's not should I or shouldn't I. God called us to sacrifice, to make an impact in the world, to invest eternally, to go beyond where we are right now. There's always sacrifice involved. God sacrificed to cover Adam and Eve. God sacrificed to cover our sins, right? And following the example of Christ, he asks us to follow him and to do the same thing. What do I sacrifice to honor you, God? To chase after you, God? To serve you more, God? To make your name famous, God? To keep making an impact in the world around me. God, what do I do? What do I do? Because it's not should I, but it's how much. And that's where I think God is leading us. I think as a Christian, that's where God leads you. You read it throughout Scripture. Now, for those of us who may not be a Christian, hey, God's got a plan for you too. Check this out, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. This is relevant to every single person in this room, all right? So it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, that's Jesus, a life-giving spirit. Adam became a living being. He had a soul, just like you and I. But Jesus is a life-giving spirit. So my question for you is, in what part of this verse have you stopped? All of you in this room have made it through the first Adam became a living being. You are a living being, but there's no period there. There's no stop there. There's still some of your story being written. God's got a plan for you. He's got the next step for you. He's got something life-giving for you. If your soul's not healthy, could it be that we stopped here and we never accepted the gift of Jesus Christ and that life-giving nature that he has? So the question is, where in this verse did you put a period where God intended to keep writing the story of who you are? Where in this verse did we stop and embrace our own will, just like Adam, to do our own thing, to step away from what God wants for us? Where do we put a period where God was putting in a little semicolon because your story is not being finished written? There's still more time. There's still more to do. There's still more life to be poured into you. Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 10, I want to give you life and have it to the fullest, abundant, overflowing life. Are you there? Yes? No? Maybe, right? There's still more story to be written. There's still more of your life to be lived out. And the way we do that is our relationship with Christ. We let Jesus Christ write our story. We let him finish the sentence in our life. We let him write more life in by sacrificing who we say we need to be and embracing who he says we are. The Bible calls that salvation. Saved from just the normal life and embracing all that God has for us. Can we take a moment and let's pray? And here's what we're gonna pray. We're gonna pray that the life-giving Spirit of Jesus Christ would change us. And we're gonna say, God, I am sorry for putting a period where you wanted to keep writing. For stopping my story where you wanted to keep going. To surrender everything we are to him. So let's do this. Maybe you could close your eyes, bow your heads, so no one's distracted. Even nobody moving around now, so we can have just a moment between you and God. Not me, you and God. We're gonna pray a prayer, and it's so simple. It says, God, forgive me for putting a period where you wanted to keep writing. I accept your son Jesus as the sacrifice for my sins, for my covering. And I pray that you keep writing my story with new life. That's what we're gonna pray. If that's you this morning, I want you to pray this prayer with me. Jesus, this morning I pray that you would forgive me. Forgive me my sins. Forgive me my brokenness. Forgive me for putting my will above yours. And I pray today that I would have a healthy soul. That I wouldn't put a period where you wanted to keep writing the story of my life, that I would accept that new life that only you can give. So today I give my heart to you. I step back into right relationship with you. Today I surrender everything I am, God. In your name we pray. Everybody says, amen.